They sold you a fairy tale. They polished it, packaged it, and delivered it like destiny itself. The outsider who broke into royalty, the woman who preached authenticity louder than anyone else in the room. But what happens when the very foundation of that authenticity starts shaking? What happens when whispers from inside her own bloodline begin to expose cracks nobody was supposed to see? Because this isn't just gossip anymore. This is something darker, something buried, something that refuses to stay silent.
We've experienced, for negative effect, the self-publication. I think it's been quite hurtful to our family.
And unlawful. And that the tabloid's omission of several parts of the letter was a deliberate attempt to smear the Duchess.
And look, Samantha, we had Tom Bauer on earlier, who has obviously researched both sides of the story.
For years, Meghan built an empire on one simple promise: truth. She wasn't like the others, she said. She wasn't playing a role. She wasn't hiding behind palace curtains. She was real, raw, honest. She stood in front of microphones, in front of crowds, in front of cameras, and told the world she lived her truth without compromise. But the problem with building your identity on truth is that people eventually start checking the receipts. And the moment Samantha Markle opened her mouth, everything changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, no screaming headlines at first, just quiet hints, strategic pauses. Carefully chosen words that didn't accuse directly, but suggested something far more dangerous. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was planting doubt. And doubt, once planted, spreads faster than any confirmed scandal ever could. Because Samantha didn't need to expose the whole truth. She only needed to make people question the official one. And suddenly, people did.
Married in the temple, but I definitely think that this is a lot more than we were originally anticipating.
Yeah. Journalists who had spent decades dissecting royal lives, the kind of investigators who could uncover secrets kings thought were buried forever, found themselves facing something they'd never encountered before: a wall, a blank space. Missing pieces where history should have been clear. Andrew Morton, a man who had once pulled the truth straight from Princess Diana herself, admitted he couldn't reconstruct Meghan's past the way he normally could. Tom Bauer, another relentless biographer, found himself chasing shadows instead of facts. Every trail seemed to stop just before revealing something meaningful. Every timeline had gaps. And those gaps weren't small. They were surgical, clean, intentional.
Moments are laid out side by side. Some people say the narrative feels less clear than the traditional royal fairy tale.
It was like watching a movie where entire chapters had been deleted, leaving only the beginning and the ending, but none of the messy truth in between. College. Then suddenly fame. Interviews. Then suddenly royalty. The middle, the part where life actually happens, was blurred beyond recognition. And that's when people started asking the question nobody was supposed to ask. What exactly happened in those missing years? Because when someone tells their story honestly, the timeline flows naturally. It doesn't skip, it doesn't jump, it doesn't erase. But this story felt edited.
Your sister, your half-sister, has just lost her $100 million Netflix contract.
Just when the Markle family...
At first, people dismissed it. Of course they did. It was easier to believe the fairy tale than question it. Easier to admire the polished image than search for what might have been hidden beneath it. But then Samantha stepped forward again. Not with accusations, with something far more dangerous. Documentation. Not public, not fully revealed, just referenced, just hinted at. Records from the 1990s, she suggested, that had never been properly examined. Records that had been buried, locked, sealed away just when Meghan's life was transforming into something untouchable. And that's when the internet did what it always does. It went hunting.
Told Harry wouldn't have jived, wouldn't have been consistent with the truth.
Because once Samantha Markle started hinting at things the public doesn't know,
Someone contacted the California Birth Records Office directly. Not for attention, not for clicks, for answers. And what they received wasn't confirmation. It wasn't denial. It was something worse. Acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that records existed from 1997, records connected to Meghan Markle, but records that were completely sealed, locked, unavailable, untouchable. And the timing, that was the part that made people stop breathing. Because those records weren't sealed immediately. They weren't protected back in 1997 when they were first created. They were sealed in December 2018. Just months after Meghan became a royal. Just months after she stepped fully into a life where every detail of her past suddenly mattered more than ever. 21 years later. Why seal something 21 years later unless there was a reason? And that's when the questions stopped being quiet. They became explosive. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about a missing timeline anymore. It was about deliberate protection, deliberate silence, deliberate control. And Samantha wasn't done. She didn't scream. She didn't beg for attention. She did something far more powerful. She stayed calm. She spoke like someone who knew the truth didn't need to be forced, because eventually the truth forces itself out. And people noticed. They noticed her restraint. They noticed her confidence. They noticed the way she spoke like someone who wasn't guessing, but remembering. And for the first time, the narrative flipped. She wasn't the jealous sister anymore. She was the insider, the witness, the person who had lived inside the story before the world ever knew it existed. And the internet became obsessed. Because obsession isn't driven by facts, it's driven by mystery. And this mystery was perfect, a sealed record. A missing timeline, a family member hinting at buried truths, and the most dangerous element of all, silence. Because Meghan didn't respond. Not publicly, not clearly, not definitively. And silence in situations like this doesn't calm the storm, it feeds it. It tells people there's something worth hiding, something worth protecting, something worth controlling. And the deeper people dug, the stranger it became. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about records anymore. Names started appearing, connections started forming. Faces people had ignored for years suddenly became the center of attention. One name in particular began circulating like wildfire: Joe Giuliano, the so-called ghost from the past. Forums exploded, photos were analyzed, theories multiplied faster than anyone could contain them. Was he connected? Was he involved? Was he part of whatever happened in 1997? People wanted answers so badly, they began creating them. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. Because when investigators tried to verify the claims, when they tried to find proof, the trail collapsed. No confirmed marriage records, no official documentation, no verifiable connection strong enough to support the theory. The Joe Giuliano story wasn't the truth. It was a distraction. And distractions don't appear by accident. They appear when attention needs to be redirected. Because while the internet chased ghosts, the real story was hiding somewhere else. Somewhere closer, somewhere familiar, somewhere inside the family itself. And that's when another name began surfacing. Not a stranger, not a mystery figure, someone who had been visible all along. Sean Johnson, a cousin, a family member. Someone who had always existed inside Meghan's personal world, but had never been examined this closely before. And the moment people started looking at him differently, everything shifted again. Because sometimes the truth isn't hidden behind strangers. Sometimes it's hidden behind familiar faces no one thought to question. And the deeper people looked, the more uncomfortable the questions became. Because suddenly, this wasn't about rumors anymore. It was about patterns. Patterns of silence, patterns of sealed records, patterns of missing explanations. And the one person who had started it all, Samantha Markle, still wasn't finished. She didn't need to prove anything, because the doubt she created was already doing the damage for her. And doubt, once born, never dies. It grows. It spreads. It waits, waiting for the moment when the truth can no longer stay buried. Because the moment Sean Johnson's name entered the conversation, the energy changed. This wasn't some random ghost from the past anymore. This wasn't some blurry stranger whose existence depended on grainy photos and internet imagination. This was family. This was blood. This was someone who had been standing in plain sight the entire time, unnoticed, unexamined, unquestioned. Until now, people started going back through everything: old photos, home videos, family gatherings frozen in time. Moments that once meant nothing suddenly meant everything. Every smile was analyzed, every resemblance scrutinized. Every interaction replayed like it contained hidden meaning no one had recognized before. Because once doubt enters the room, nothing looks innocent anymore. And that's when the most dangerous phrase began circulating, the phrase that turned quiet suspicion into full-blown obsession. What if the story everyone believed wasn't the complete one? Because Samantha had said something chilling, something subtle, something that didn't accuse, but implied. She hinted that what Harry had been told might not match what actually happened, and that implication alone was enough to fracture the illusion. Because this wasn't just about public image anymore. This was about private truth. This was about what happens behind closed doors before the cameras ever arrive, and the silence that followed from Meghan's side only made it worse. Not a denial, not a clarification, nothing. Just that same controlled silence that had protected her image for years. But silence doesn't erase suspicion, it amplifies it. Because when someone has nothing to hide, they speak. But when someone has everything to protect, they wait. And while Meghan waited, something else surfaced. A letter. Not a press release, not an official statement, a physical letter. Something real, something tangible, something that could be held, examined, debated. Screenshots of it began circulating like wildfire. Nobody could agree if it was authentic. Some said the handwriting matched Samantha's. Others said it was fake. Some said it confirmed everything. Others said it proved nothing. But the truth didn't matter anymore, because the letter achieved something far more powerful. It kept the mystery alive. It kept the pressure building. It kept the questions unanswered. And unanswered questions are the most dangerous kind, because they force people to imagine the worst possible answers themselves. The letter didn't need to reveal specifics. It didn't need to expose names or dates or events. It only needed to suggest that there was more beneath the surface, that there were family matters unresolved, that there were truths still waiting to be acknowledged. And the timing couldn't have been more devastating. Because just as Meghan had begun carefully reshaping her image, moving toward lifestyle brands, toward reinvention, toward a softer public identity, this letter dragged everything back into the darkness she was trying to leave behind. Months of careful planning, months of image rehabilitation, all undone in a single moment. Because suddenly, nobody cared about her future. They cared about her past. And Samantha once again said nothing. No confirmation, no denial, just silence. And that silence screamed louder than any accusation ever could. Because silence allows imagination to run free. Silence allows doubt to multiply without resistance. Silence allows mystery to grow stronger with every passing day. And then Tom Bauer, the same journalist who had struggled to reconstruct Meghan's past, said something that made everything even more unsettling. He admitted that Samantha had been dismissed too quickly, that she had been laughed at, that she had been ignored, and yet he suggested she wasn't entirely wrong. Think about what that means. This wasn't a random internet voice. This was someone who had spent years investigating her life, someone who had seen the gaps firsthand, someone who understood how carefully controlled her narrative truly was. And suddenly, Samantha's whispers didn't sound like jealousy anymore. They sounded like warnings. Because Meghan's greatest strength had always been control. Control over her image, control over her narrative, control over how the world saw her. Every interview calculated, every appearance measured, every word chosen carefully. And that level of control creates perfection. But perfection creates suspicion. Because nobody is perfect. Nobody's life unfolds without chaos. Nobody's past is that clean. And the more flawless her story appeared, the more people began searching for the flaws hidden beneath it. Because humans are wired to distrust perfection. We believe truth is messy. We believe reality leaves scars. We believe authenticity comes with contradictions. But Meghan's story, it felt polished, too polished. And Samantha understood something nobody else did. She didn't need to destroy the image. She only needed to crack it. Because once an image cracks, it never fully recovers. People never see it the same way again. They begin noticing things they ignored before. They begin questioning things they accepted without hesitation. They begin wondering what else they were never told. And the internet never forgets. It archives every inconsistency, every unanswered question, every moment of silence. Because silence in Meghan's world doesn't mean peace. It means pressure. Pressure building behind the scenes. Pressure building behind the smile. Pressure building behind the carefully constructed narrative she fought so hard to protect. And pressure always demands release. It always finds a way out. Because secrets don't stay buried forever. They wait. They wait for time. They wait for weakness. They wait for the moment when silence becomes heavier than truth. And Samantha had already proven something terrifying. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to reveal everything. She only needed to remind the world that there was more. More questions, more gaps, more silence, more truth waiting somewhere beneath the surface. And now, every time Meghan steps forward, every time she speaks, every time she tries to move beyond the past, the questions follow her. Quiet, persistent, unavoidable. Because this story was never about one record. It was never about one letter. It was never about one rumor. It was about the possibility that the fairy tale everyone believed was only part of the truth. And the most dangerous part of all, the story isn't over. It's still unfolding, still building, still waiting. Because eventually, silence breaks. And when it does, everything changes.